Hi, everybody. We're going to be talking to Tatiana Ortiz-Rubio today, and I'm just going to be trying to connect with her. Give it a second. Coming up, we have Sophie Ramos, Francisco M.A., Jason Sherry, Belize Iriste, Tom Driscoll, and we're going to be adding more people all the time, and Tatiana is here.
Hi.
Hi. Wow, I'm glad that worked because we didn't do a test earlier, so I'm like
I know.
kind
I
of
was a bit nervous about how we were going to do this.
yeah, no, it looks clear and I can hear you. So
Great.
one thing I was just about to say is that we've already were able to add some of your work to the artist store on the Bread and Salt website. I saw that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so on that online store, 100% of the proceeds in the artist store goes to the artist for sales. So there's also another store that's for the gallery that Ponka's work is in. Ponka does have some drawings in the artist store, but in the gallery, some of the proceeds go back to Bread and Salt. But for the artist store, it's 100% goes to the artist. So
Oh, thank you. That's great.
yeah, and your stuff looks great on there. You have some big drawings available, so those are really cool.
Yeah,
How are you doing in this time of quarantine?
it's crazy. I'm okay. I mean, with the kids, it's like we're most of the time we're at home anyways.
Yeah.
Especially with my daughter. But other than that, we're doing okay. It's a bit crazy to homeschool, try to work, and remote teach has been tricky, to say the
Yeah,
least.
I know you have two young kids, and you're also teaching. You're at USD. Is that where you're teaching, or?
Right, University of San Diego. Yeah, I'm teaching intro to drawing, so those are usually large classes.
Yeah.
And I got a couple of the kids are in different time zones, so that's made it a bit more difficult. And it's 3 hour studio class, so
Wow. How
it's it's
how has it
weird.
been? How's it been transitioning online?
They're being very good at working the hours they need to work, so that's made it easier for me.
Hmm.
But it's hard to give them feedback because usually I literally draw on their drawings to help them see what I'm seeing, and that's where I feel I teach the best. So yeah, I'm trying my best to, English is a second language, trying my best to describe what they need to do, what kind of line they need to fix. But I think we're doing okay. I think we're doing okay.
Right. Well, let's talk about your background. I mean, you just now saying that English is your second language. What's your history? Where did, I grabbed some photos of some earlier work that I remember seeing of yours and things like that. So we'll get there. But, what's your background? And
Yeah, well, I was born here in San Diego. My parents were studying at UCSD. They came here for 5 years my dad was doing his doctorates, my mom was writing her dissertation, and
wow.
so I was born here, so I do feel like I'm from here, although um, only partly because my whole family is in Mexico and I did grow up there. We moved back when I was 3 to Mexico City. And we have a strong family history with the country. So I feel very strongly about being Mexican.
Were your
Um,
parents originally from Mexico City? Is that why you ended up back there?
yeah, exactly. They just moved back. They came here for 5 years. A lot of Mexicans came during that time in the 80s.
Okay.
Yeah, they decided to move back, and I grew up there until I was 18, and then I started college in Rome in Italy, and I transferred to San Diego to USD.
Wow.
Yeah, so circling around, I ended up going back to Mexico when I met my husband,
Hmm.
and then I went for 2 years to New York for my master's at the New York Academy of Art.
So when did art come into your life? Were you going to museums? Were you doing all that kind of stuff? I know you have this really uh, heavy kind of illustration background and traditional painting and all that kind of stuff. When you were studying
Yeah,
in Rome, was that studying painting or?
I did study that there. No, it was before. My mom was, well, my family has had a lot of artists, although none of them took it to a professional level. They kind of just dabbled in them, although they were very good, extremely good. My aunt paints. My grandfather painted a lot. And another aunt from my dad's family is also an artist. So I do have many family members that are artists, and also just family that loves art. It's always been since I was little, going to museums was just, that was the way we touristed. I mean, my dad they would force us to spend the whole day in a museum. I mean, when we went to New York, it was literally eating there and staying the rest of the day.
You just said forcing you to stay.
Yeah, well, because when you're little, you don't want to be there all day.
Right.
Yeah, but they would make it fun, and my mom would tell stories about the images, and yeah. So, and then my mom was also a painter, a dancer, a singer. So art in general was always present. And I was gonna study philosophy.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I love that as well. Although I went to Rome, and I decided what I really wanted to do was paint. Yeah.
Did you have art in the home growing up? Did you have things where your parents collecting, or did you have stuff by family members in the house that kind of inspired you? Or
yes, both. They loved. Yeah, I remember not just having artwork in the house. My dad loved collecting the Christie's and the Sotheby's books and all of those, especially from Latin American artists, but from everything. Yeah, they've always had that interest, so it was kind of a natural thing to be exposed to for me. Although not much contemporary art. They were always much more classical in that sense.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I started more towards figurative interest.
So when you went to Rome, what was the intention there? What were you doing there?
Supposedly I was just gonna learn Italian and live by myself for the first time for like a semester, and then go back to Mexico and study philosophy. But I fell in love with the people. I fell in love with the culture, and I stayed for a year and a half. And then I realized I wanted to go back, but to the States. Yeah.
Yeah, Rome's hard to leave. I got to go there like a year ago, and we ended up going back on the same trip. Like, we have to go back to Rome. It's such a beautiful place, you know?
Yeah.
Just turning a corner and seeing a ruin, you know, having a column that has fallen down, and there's just a couple little barriers around it, and it's been there forever. It's pretty
yeah, that's what I love that. I love that people just learn to live with that at every single, like you said, every corner. There's something that is incredible. Yeah. And I love the people, because I feel that they're so proud of their culture. And I think, I don't know, I think that even though it's good that we're, you know, sharing with them technology today and everything, and we're more globalized, but I also feel like there's certain cultures that are good at resisting certain changes. And I think they've done a good job of marrying kind of contemporary with the old. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a feeling there where they're not behind. You know, people are driving new cars or new motorcycles or whatever, and they all have the technology, but they're all so attuned and aware to what is happening, you know.
They're very much do everything in their own way, which I love. So
what came first? Illustration? Were you picking up pencils and doing drafting? What were you doing, or did you get into painting and all that kind of stuff?
Painting. Yeah, I found a little school. It was called La Porta Blu, and near the Parthenon. I mean, near the I just forgot. But it was a really tiny place that was underground, and I was learning sculpture and painting. The Pantheon. I'm sorry.
Right.
And that's where I started. There was just like a couple teachers there that were professional artists, and started this little school. And that's where. Although I had always sort of seen my mom painting, and I had tried that in high school, but never really took it seriously until I realized it was what I wanted to do. After that, it just kind of, when I transferred here to San Diego, that was it. I knew that was going to be my major, and art history. I've always loved the other part where it's the art historical, the philosophical. I love all that part as well. Yeah.
I grabbed a couple photos. Some of this stuff, I grabbed this from your Instagram, but this early kind of self-portrait, but I'm just seeing that you had clouds in there. Is that an early painting, or was there work before this kind of?
Yeah, that was in my artist in residency program in the Dominican Republic. I went there for a semester to teach and do a residency at the Chavon School of Art. It's a really special school. It's a 2-year program, and when they graduate, they go to some of them get to go to Parsons,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's a really great school. And that, yeah, I started falling in love with clouds there, actually.
Yeah, I'm remembering a story that you had told us about doing this residency, and when the clouds kind of came in.
Yeah, they
time,
would just
like this
always,
inspiration.
I would go out for a run and they would always do the same formation in one section of the bay. And I always thought that was really weird that it was always a very similar formation, and just started getting very obsessed with that cloud. And I started thinking, I've always been interested in our relationship to time
Mm-hmm.
and our experience to that, just because, again, my interest in philosophy and history. So that's where I think it started coming out more intentionally. But those were more like, those are really small, and I was just sort of playing around with those. And yeah, but that
We
was,
did just get a question. Who are some of your favorite philosophers and why?
oh, interesting. I really like, although I am not an expert, my mom was a philosopher, so I kind of learned most of that from her.
Mm-hmm.
Although I have tried reading, but just like when I read science, I feel like when I finish a book and very accomplished, I realize I didn't understand half of it.
Yeah, kind of exhausting.
But Ortega y Gasset has been someone that has been very interesting to me. That idea of that everything is just an influence, and that it's all subject. So it's more like a postmodern kind of view that it's all subjective to your own experience. So and that anything human I can relate to anything that any other human has experienced, because it's not foreign. I'm human, even if it's the most horrible thing like murder. I mean, this is going really dark, but or death or anything, I still have that potential because I am human. So I like that. I like that feeling of finding some kind of connection, even though everything is subjective. It's still subjective to the fact that we're human beings. And I hope I'm explaining him correctly, but that's what I
don't know.
Yeah.
Art and philosophy is hand in hand. I mean, there's so much, just thinking in the studio and just kind of wondering why and asking questions. I mean, I feel like, the arts are just right in there with the same
Yeah.
thought.
But yeah, I think that has always stayed in my mind, that idea of nothing human is foreign to me, and the idea of subjectivity of the human being. Yeah, I think that definitely has been one of the most influential, I guess.
Just to remind people, you can use that question mark icon down at the bottom to ask questions. But just getting back on track to kind of find out a little bit more about your process and how you arrived at some of the work that you're doing now. You mentioned you were in Rome, and then you came back to the US, and you had done some residencies bouncing around and things like that. And teaching already came in?
Yeah, well, after my my master's in New York, I was offered the teaching residency at the Chabon School in the DR. And then from there, my old professor from USD contacted me and asked if I wanted to teach something. And of course, I said yes. And plus, I love San Diego. I thought it was great. My husband and I were just engaged, and we were thinking of like, where are we going to end up?
Yeah.
And he wanted to study film, and I wanted to keep working with art. And Mexico City was just felt far away from me now. I didn't want to be in such a intensity, although I love visiting it. But now the idea of living in it after um, being in the DR and detoxing from the intensity of New York, which is
Mhm.
amazing, but it's so intense.
Yeah.
I thought San Diego was a kind of a perfect place. So we came here, and that's how I ended up at USD, and yeah, stayed there. Luckily, yeah.
Um, well, so I guess I'm just trying to think of when Isabel and I went and did a studio visit with you.
Oh, yeah.
We saw a lot of work of yours. I remember you had this very traditional still life setup. You had, I think, a plein
That
air
was a
easel.
gift. Yeah, it's like a
Yep.
wedding gift.
Yeah, and it was like grapes and wine bottles and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But it was, we were like just looking at the work that you had started on this canvas. I was like, okay, this is like pretty incredible.
Thank you.
But
Yeah, I love painting from life. I think no matter where an artist goes, in my opinion, well, at least because I'm teaching, maybe that's how I think about it this way, but just learning from observation, no matter what you do, as abstract as conceptual as it can be, just training your eye from observation is, it's the most
yeah,
important thing.
um,
But
and
that I don't usually do still lives. That was a gift for my best friend
right.
since we were little. And that's what she
No,
wanted.
you had explained to us that it was a gift, but
Yeah.
I'm just mentioning the way that we saw your studio when we went. You also showed us some illustrations. I'm going to throw some illustrations up here.
Oh yeah. The
Some
wolf.
of this stuff just showing your ability at drafting and using pen and ink and everything. It's pretty incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, those are all just pen. Yeah, that's it. That's all it is. Yeah, those little
Microns.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
But just at that time when we went and did a studio visit with you, I think we were talking about doing a residency or something. I don't know. We saw your work. I can't remember how we ended up hearing about you, but Isabel talked to you or something, and then we went to
Isabel bought one of the little cloud portraits
Oh, cool.
from the Athenaeum.
Um,
Yeah.
that's neat. Was it for a juried exhibition or?
Yeah, exactly.
Um, cool. Yeah, I mean, it just happens like that. Sometimes you just, you buy work because you like it and get to know an artist, and it just evolves from there. Um, can you tell us about some of your earlier painting and stuff? I know I'm kind of bouncing around, but just getting to
Oh, no,
know
fine.
your process and everything a little bit. I have some of these photos of your series of bubble wrap pieces,
Yeah.
and then the bed pieces. Which came first, the bubble wrap or the bed series?
The bubble wrap. That was my series for my thesis in New York. Hmm.
This is a horrible way to show artwork, but it's just a way for people to kind of get an idea of what you were doing and your ability as a painter.
Thank you. Yeah. No, yeah. It's funny. You guys were so um important in how my work changed, actually. But yeah, I was much more formal paint. Well, I'm not painting anymore, so. But yeah, I did the series of bubble wrap for my thesis, and see, it still is related to sight, though. I feel like those little cloud drawings were related to sight as well, and that feeling of blindness. Um, but yeah, there's something, I'm not sure what, but there was something there with sight. Also with that feeling of just being very confused with reality, I guess. I've always, again, philosophy, I've always questioned just everything to a degree that just drives me a little bit crazy.
Yeah, it seems like you're kind of blocking somebody's vision in most of these bubble wrap pieces.
Yeah. And also, there's always been that element of life and death, that the question of the meaning of life, but that always relates to death eventually. And so that relates to time again, to the fact that life and death, and it's time going by, and something that is going to end, and so yeah, that's always been there.
So you were teaching at USD when we went and did the studio visit with you? Were you?
Yes, I was teaching. I had stopped working just in general because I had had my daughter, my first child, and she has a really rare genetic disorder called Angelman Syndrome. I always
Yeah,
like to
tell us about it.
mention it to raise awareness.
I know you've done the fundraisers and stuff, and you've tried to do different things, but tell us a little bit about it. I mean, I've been, when you started telling us about the syndrome, I mean, it was interesting looking into it and stuff.
Yeah, it's a very rare disorder. It's genetic. It's well, not always random, but for the most part, one in every 15 to 20,000 births, and it it affects everything really, just general developmental intellectual delay, disability. But she has surpassed everything that the doctors had told us. They told her she might never walk. She walks. Just she's amazing. But
She
she's
seems in
definitely
such good spirits every time you've had her at an art opening or when you were doing the mural and stuff. Um,
yes.
you can see the happiness in there. And it's, how has
Yeah.
she been doing watching you do work and stuff like that? I saw a photo recently of you letting her draw on a wall and stuff like that.
Yeah, I built a huge chalkboard wall for her outside because she loves it. She loves getting dirty. She
Mhm.
loves draw. She draws everywhere. She draws on her body.
That's cool.
Yeah, I should film her. She's the ultimate performance artist.
Mhm. Yeah.
And but yeah, she's very happy. Angelman syndrome in general are children that they're genuinely just like very happy, like
Hmm.
sometimes too much. um, and yeah, I think even sometimes when she's sad, she might start laughing. So it's a bit confusing. But she's been a great inspiration for me actually. It was a hard first year, and when I met you guys, I was coming out of pretty severe postpartum depression
Hmm.
and also finding out about her syndrome and just kind of getting a grasp from like this new reality. But it instead of I don't know, instead of stopping me from doing work and being creative, it inspired me, and that's
Yeah.
when I went to see that space in
Hmm.
bread and salt, and I was like, I'm just gonna go for it. And
Yeah, it's really refreshing to hear you talk so openly about the struggles that you've gone through with your daughter and also just your mental wellness, dealing with all the struggles of raising a young person. But yeah, I remember, well, after we did that studio visit with you, but you had shown us also the bed paintings, where I'm going to
oh
show you
yeah,
because
those were yeah.
it's such a horrible way to show these paintings, but and it's cropped, of course. It's horrible that it's cropped, but
It's
I
okay.
wish I wish my face wasn't in there.
They
But
could
the
you could go after to my website and they're there.
yeah, the detail and the your painting ability is just incredible in these. But you were painting. Tell us about the paintings and the idea behind that.
Yeah, I was kind of searching, to be honest. That's the truth. After the DR and getting here, I was kind of just searching for what I wanted to say in my work. I wasn't sure anymore. Um, and I love the figure. I still
Hmm.
do. I'm not sure how it's going to come up again in my work, but I love the figure. And I was just thinking a lot about I was kind of obsessing about forms in beds and lying there, just thinking of something that would, I don't know, finding something that was common ground yet very routine and
Yeah.
meaningless and meaningful at the same time. And I kept going back to the idea of the bed, and
Hmm.
I started researching in art history. I have a huge collection of images from bed paintings in art history, and how that's never kind of been cliche. It's just the bed has been present in installations, and
Hmm.
yeah, and it's still this just like a rectangular object, but
Yeah,
it's
I'm thinking
incredibly
of
meaningful. Everything happens in a bed.
I'm thinking of a very simple Van Gogh painting of him. He did a portrait, a painting of his, bed with a pipe sitting next to it, and yeah, you're right. It's definitely been something in art history. Um, Yeah, and I know exactly what you're saying. I feel like you were searching, and when you have this ability to you know, say draw anything, or render a figure or anything. I know when I started painting and drawing, it was so figurative. Everything was figurative, and I got so good at it in my mind, and people were complimenting me, and I was basically rendering from photographs all the time, and it felt like I wasn't being challenged. And I started coming up with these routine kind of paintings and these series that I was doing, and it felt like I was not challenging myself anymore. And I at some point, basically abandoned that practice because I just was kind of pushing, these series ideas and things like that. And then I remember just thinking back to when we met you and you were showing us all these beautiful paintings and things like that. And Isabel and I left, and we were thinking like, wow, she's incredible. But what does that mean for Bread and Salt to just be showing flat work or show these, incredibly rendered paintings and things? But then you approached us about doing this mural project at Bread and Salt, and it got us all just really excited that you were willing to just experiment and take this leap into not knowing what something would be, or just, it was this really refreshing moment to see somebody that is like so, your ability was so set in this style.
Right.
But you were also at this moment where you were looking to just do something.
Yeah, I feel like, well, and we've talked about this, but I relate so much to what you just said about what happened in your own work. I don't know if the figure will ever come back into mine. It may be. I mean, I'm not close to it, but
yeah,
it kind of, I agree. It kind of had its time, and I suddenly didn't feel like I could do anything with it anymore. And then also, I just feel like an artist's work is so married to what you're living through.
mm-hmm.
And I mean, at least in my opinion, when an artist's work doesn't change for decades, then they're not being very honest.
Yeah.
So I mean, I tried to be honest and say like, yeah, exactly like you said, like I feel like I have this ability to do this with the figure, but I don't really know what to say with it anymore.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know what to do. I went to see the space, and I thought that it was such a crazy space to just have one small door, no windows, these beautiful, huge walls. And I've always wanted to find a way to connect with the Mexican artists. And the muralists obviously always come to mind, especially Maria Izquierdo, who was the only woman muralist of the time that got real commissions, although they boycotted her all the time. But she was always, she's a huge inspiration to me. And yeah, I don't know. I just got there and saw that and thought, well, how can I make it my own? And I actually, what you described as someone that is open to playing that way, I've never been that kind of person. I don't know what happened.
You fooled us, because I mean, you were just like, you saw that space and you were like all about it, which that space was kind of new at the moment. I mean, it's what's called, I think, the proofing room. Bread and Salt is an old bakery. It was a bakery for over 100 years, if people don't know. But that room was where, from what I understand, there's a big giant mixer outside of that room, and they would mix the dough, and then they would put it in these big containers and then put it in that room to let it rest. And then they would do other processes with the dough, and then it would go into the factory to be turned into bread or whatever they were making. But that room was filled with stainless steel, and it was full of, it was like a wet room, like a refrigerated kind of wet room. And I did all the demo and skim coated the walls and kind of cleaned up the space and took out the ceiling. And then we were looking for people to do really special stuff in there. I kept calling it the project space or special project space, with the intention of it not just being this space to just hang a painting or something. And you kind of approached us at that perfect moment. And I want to show a photo. I'm kind of jumping around, but I grabbed this from your Instagram. It's a really neat photo of the finished work. I have other images, but Yeah, I have some process stuff too, but I remember at that time, you were just so into the idea of making this work on site, and we talked about calling it a residency, which we still think of it as this residency, even though it wasn't in our residency space. But um, this neat moment of just letting an artist do what they do completely is such a neat thing that we do here at Bread and Salt, just letting an artist
It
be able to
is.
kind of do what they do. And I guess what I was thinking a minute ago is artists always end up putting, or in my mind, I always think of artists putting their abilities into their toolbox, like your ability to render and use materials, traditional materials like charcoal that you're trained with. You know, all that stuff goes in your brain and into this kind of conceptual toolbox kind of thing. And you basically pulled out all of these skills to render on a wall freestyle. I know you were referencing a little bit, but you were making up the whole thing as you went too, I know.
Yeah. Well, again, it was a completely new way to work for me. And I honestly, I mean, and this isn't just like, I'm not just saying this. I mean, honestly, it was my whole experience with my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
She, when you live something like that, well, at least for me, it was so transformative that all those fears I used to have of just playing around kind of were meaningless. I mean, of course, I always have fears of like, what are people going to think of this work or that? But
Right.
they are so secondary now.
Mm-hmm.
And it just allowed me this huge freedom and a very different relationship to my creative work that has been very liberating. I mean, when I was there and decided to do this, I remember I was flying to Mexico a week before, Mexico City, and it's always so incredible to fly into that city, no matter the time of day, because it's a monster of a city, and it's beautiful in its hugeness and its vastness. And to know the richness that lives in it. And so it was just I always get excited about getting close in the airplane. And we were getting there and the sun was setting and there was this really thick blanket of clouds that we were like getting close to and we were going to cross it. And I kept thinking like, this is exactly, well, I had already been thinking about the concept of time.
Mm-hmm.
And as we were approaching it, I just thought, this is exactly the feeling that I have when I think of time in my own personal experience, which is both really light and fleeting and yet very heavy and kind of scary because you're flying, but you're going to fall.
Yeah.
So that's when I decided, oh, this is what I want to do with this space at Bread and Salt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I do want to say, you guys are really special about how much freedom you give us.
Yeah, I mean, that's, Isabel and Jim just, knowing that, well, Isabel has a massive art background and she knows what it's like. And, I know what it's like and Jim knows what it's like. So, an artist is only going to flourish if you just give them an opportunity. But I remember also this, you basically started it with this horizon. So there's a horizon line that was around the room. So it feels like it was at your scale, this kind of eye level horizon. And it's like what you're saying about being in an airplane and dropping into the clouds. There's a real heaviness to the room, a weight that was anchored at the bottom. It made these clouds not only feel light and fluffy, but also that they were anchored towards the floor.
Oh, good. Yeah.
It was I mean, I remember how simply you started it, though. I think you did like a horizon line reference, and then you just started playing jazz, on the wall, kind of referencing, and that, pulling out of that toolbox all these different references for the way that a cloud might kind of disappear or have.
Yeah, and I think that was learning to work from the figure in New York. I mean, that school, you only learn from life. Mm-hmm. And so I really felt like I tried to start with an image. I had a little photo in my phone the first day and I was like, what am I doing? Like, right. No, I already know how light works and shadow works. And this is not about rendering something
right
perfectly. This is about me just like going for it, and that's what ended up happening.
Yeah, and I, during Ponka's interview, very similar state of, what am I referencing this little tiny image for? When Ponka did the big ice cream cone mural, I was standing there next to her when she made the first mark, and she just had this moment of like, what? Why am I looking at this stupid thing?
Right.
You know? You did produce a very beautiful Small Horizons sketch that was on the wall, I think, as reference, and I think Grady and John Baez ended up with that. I can't remember.
Yeah, they did. They did.
Um,
Yeah, I did that because I was really scared the first day. I had never done something so large, and so I thought I'm just gonna sketch something out and see if I like it. And that was it. That was as much as I did for prep work.
yeah, and so just getting into the piece, I mean, I don't have great photos of it, but you've obviously documented it, so I'm just showing some small reference stuff. But
Sure.
the room is basically 30 foot by 30 foot square with a central entrance. So I just want to show a picture of the tool table. So you did this massive piece with just the most basic of tools.
Yeah, it's probably less than that.
Right. There's a
Yeah.
great photo on your Instagram of just your hand,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So tell us about the simplicity of creating the work.
Yeah, well, I bought all this stuff that I thought I might use, and it ended up being completely just slowing me down. It was
Right.
also actually that's an important part for me of these murals is that they are um, they're very emotional. I feel like they're very intense the way I have to do them. It just feels like I have to do them that way. So it kept slowing me down. I bought these. See, I have some here. Chunky charcoals, which are that's how they're called. They are
the big stuff.
they're like this thick. I bought a bunch of those. That's what I ended up using. Those my fingers. Sometimes I did end up using my gloves. I ended up with those the deerskin gloves.
Yeah.
And those were great. They're like chamois, but on your hands.
Right.
So those were great for blending because I ended up I lost my fingerprints.
I wish I captured that photo so we could show it, but this little video of you actually doing it, I mean, you can see you're wearing I saw your technique change over the days and hours of like how you were doing it. Number one, I mean, I think you learned at some point you had to have a respirator.
Oh yeah.
So
I would get home and have to shower for like 2 hours because
I mean, you're wearing a Tyvek suit, which people might know because of the COVID situation about PPE, personal protective equipment, but you're suited up. You're wearing a Tyvek suit. You're wearing a respirator.
Yeah, I had to. It got again. It was I was working so intensely that I was also using the powdered charcoal, and that just like really just blows everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I started covering. Now I have a whole technique down. When I did my mural at the Acute, which was my third one, by then I had my hair protected, my eyes, everything.
Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was in process in the Acute.
At Acute.
Yeah.
Which I almost grabbed one of the photos. You could see that piece from the outside of the building. Is that right? I didn't get to go. I was having to deal with some family stuff at the time, but I think Isabel and Jim and a lot of people went to see it. But that piece you could see from a windowed area too.
Well, if you come in, it's like the main entrance of the museum. So that's where you can, if you cross, it's like like the entrance. It's like the lobby basically. So you can go to all these different areas. So it was a difficult space to work with. There were actually 3 different walls that were separated from different entrances. So that's the place where you go to the cubo, for example, and stuff like that, or the offices of the director, or
I always
upstairs.
feel like I get kind of lost whenever I go there. I don't know which building I'm actually walking into.
Yeah.
What came first, the Acute or the piece that you did at Quint Gallery?
Quint. So Quint was almost immediately after Bread and
Right.
Salt closed. And they were like, it was kind of last minute. They're like, well, we can give you a week, I think they said. But you know, after doing Bread and Salt, I did this in, I think it was like 3-4 days.
Yeah, you had the methodology kind of down. I did hear that they had to throw up some plastic walls because they didn't anticipate the powder going everywhere.
And me neither. I felt so bad. Yes. Well,
Yeah,
you guys were so free that I didn't even think about protecting anything. I did.
but
Yeah.
it's so interesting that you had this like flurry of energy. I mean, I'm just thinking about how much work that was to do the Bread and Salt piece, and then to transition right into doing this massive piece at Quint Gallery, which I know a lot of people saw it there, but you had this like really renewed energy to create work. Is that right? Like just this whole
Oh,
new
yeah.
method and excitement about creating something. Because when we met you, and prior to that, you were just kind of trying to get back into finding what you were doing.
Totally. I was stuck, but yeah, the mural at Bread and Salt not only helped me get unstuck, but it also just obsessed me.
Yeah,
I do feel like it was cathartic. It was obsessive. I actually did Quint, and then I couldn't wait to get another wall. And finally, with the Acute, I was pregnant, and I was like, well, he's gonna help me draw this because I'm not gonna stop.
your husband.
My baby in my
Oh,
belly.
right. Yeah, I mean, I'm so glad you also refined your PPE, your personal protective equipment by that.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's not a healthy experience to be breathing
Yeah.
all that stuff. But yeah, the piece at Quint is so beautifully refined and simple. I mean, just to take this black negative space and to just have this puffy little cloud in the top, and the way that you also addressed the edges, at Bread and Salt, you basically did end to end, floor to ceiling. It just like the edges of a paper, you basically worked to the edge. And here you started to, deal in how do you address a piece stopping and starting. It's a really neat way you decided to address that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you know what happened was that I realized that even though the clouds are definitely something that I don't know if they're clouds anymore in a way. I mean, they are, but they're not for me. They're marks. They're
Right.
they're shapes. But also this empty, like I've said, time is the concept that I've been pretty obsessed with.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of this empty space of dark matter, of the unknown. I mean, it's so many things. It's also just my angst, you know?
Yeah.
And it just started becoming very interesting to me. I also, again, maybe it's the teaching or my interest in history, but I'm also I got very interested, and I remember speaking to you because you make your own charcoal.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I love that, and I love that the idea that this material connects me to the most essential first drawing that was ever done, which is
Right.
this person that decided in a cave, I need to leave a mark.
Right.
And I love that. Like, I love that creative intent that all human beings have.
Yeah.
And it's a line. It's just one line, but it's like this thing of this need to say I'm here, So those marks are important, are very important to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying because I also have done a lot of mark making on walls and things, and that exact what you just exactly said about the earliest kind of feeling and just the want to leave a mark or make a mark on a surface that's in front of you is just like, kids are doing it, it's just this like, it comes from graffiti, it comes from all these different things from the beginning of time, and it's still going on today. that's why a lot of graffiti is still interesting to me, as much as I hate it. You know, I did grow up doing graffiti and things like that, and vandalizing stuff, and just this need as a young person to just say that you were there.
Yeah.
Or you know, it's as old as time.
Exactly.
The Werner Herzog film, Cave of Forgotten Dreams, that film is so neat, where they talk about these caves in France, and you know, they're basically the oldest known records of humans mark making. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, and I can completely relate to it. I also love what you had said about it just being mark making now, and it's not so much rendering a cloud. It's like you have this ability in your toolbox of just, you know, all the time spent working figuratively and referencing stuff. All that is in your brain, and you can just pull into it and just do these different marks and techniques. It's pretty incredible.
Thank you. Yeah.
Where are you at right now? I know, so we talked about Acute, we talked about everything else. Oh, and I've seen some new kind of imagery that you're working on. Can you show us stuff in this?
I can show you. Yeah,
okay, cool.
I can tell you first. I want to do more murals, obviously. So,
right.
I was in the middle of talks. I don't know if I should mention with who, but I don't want to like, but I hopefully a gallery here in San Diego maybe, cool. But I mean, I don't know anymore with everything that's going on.
Right, everything's changing all the time, but I would hope, just like we're hoping to, you know, keep a relationship with everybody that we've planned on shows. We've just ceased to commit to a time frame. We're trying to just push everything back calendar wise.
Yeah, so hopefully here in San Diego, whenever everything gets back to normal, I'd like to do one. And I also I really feel the need to go to Mexico and do something there. So I'm hoping, yeah, I mean, I was waiting to get back to work. I took a while again with my second kid to get back, but I've been drawing now at home. I've been doing some piece and paper, which I've been wanting to. I can show you.
Yeah,
this is in progress right now. And this one, I've got an old drawing there, and this one, let me just see if I can uncover it. This one I just finished, and again, it kind of came out of, it was very unintentional, and it just kind of happened, which is, I find, still very surprising, because I don't think of myself that way. So again, it's this still with the concept of time. The idea that it's well, actually, I was talking to my dad when I was sketching this, and it literally came from. I can show you. I don't mind showing you.
Yeah.
My doodles while I was talking to him.
Oh, like, yeah.
This is it.
That's really neat.
Yeah, and so he has been a great partner because he has been studying this with me. Oh, wow. He's always loved to learn and read. He reads as if, you know, a book was like a potato chip. He just like reads like 10 books a day.
Oh, that's a good way to describe that.
Yeah, and he's read all these books with me and studied this concept, not just like through physics, but also philosophically, and it's been so fun. And also because I feel he understands it better, and I always forget or get confused and have someone to ask again, like, can you explain why time doesn't exist?
Yeah. On the topic of time, we did just get a question. How do you feel about the impermanence of your murals? Does that connect to time?
Yes. Hi, Melissa. It does connect to time. I feel really strangely good about it. I've surprised myself in how I'm relating to my more current work, because I've always felt weird about selling work because I'm gonna miss it, or I don't know what's gonna happen to my babies. But I don't care anymore. And the mural, I felt the first one with you guys, we knew it had to come off anyways.
Right.
And I kind of made peace with that. And then I realized it's kind of perfect because it has an end. It has a scheduled death, and that's time, you know?
We even asked you to remove it.
Yes.
You had to clean that up yourself, which nowadays I don't think we would be doing that. But
well, my mom is here with us, and she helped, and some friends that I think are also here helped too. And
yeah, there's some great photos on your Instagram of you guys all suited up.
I think it was important for me to do it, so thank you for making me do it. I think it was important to learn just because I plan to do more, but also because it was part of the process. It definitely was. Me destroying it was as important as me making it in a way. And so in a way, these pieces, they are important that I remove them because they end up being almost like a performance in a way. So it's part of the work. Although I don't think all of them have to be, because you don't need a scheduled death to have a death. You know, it's charcoal. Eventually,
Right.
time is always going to eat something up. So
have you ever been commissioned? Are you open to commissions in a home to do a permanent or semi-permanent piece in a home, a mural in a home? Has that ever happened? Or
I've talked about it with Jim about someone's home, but we never kind of, and I think that might have been my fault, but we never kind of like discussed it. And my issue, and I have talked about it with other people, but my question is always like, how would I fix the charcoal? How would you protect it?
yeah,
Because it's so large.
I mean, frescoes in Italy are sitting there that have been there for thousands of years, and
well, right, but it's wet plaster with paint. This is just charcoal. Yeah. I don't. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess I would have to use a different material.
Yeah, I think they would last. Yeah, that would be really neat to have one in a home. I've seen lots of installations with less permanent things in people's houses.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to. Yeah, I have talked about it with a permanent mural, possible at a university in Mexico, the Claustro de Sor Juana, and but I don't know. I'm not very good. I keep forgetting things and follow up and stuff, and I've also haven't pushed it too much because I don't know when I would have the time to stay for the time it needs for me to do one. So I would have to just organize my life to be able to go there for like 2 months or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a crazy time to think about even, what the future is going to be like. So tell us more just quickly about the piece behind you. Is it on a panel? Is it on paper? What are you working on?
It's on paper. It's on, just what's it called? The Stonehenge paper.
Okay, yeah, Stonehenge.
Nice and thick.
Yeah, big, nice paper.
This is courtesy of the Acute. I got really nice materials thanks to them.
Is it 48 by 48? What is the size of that? I mean, that's a big piece of paper. Or is it the circle? Is it a cutout? I can't even tell.
It is on a square paper. I haven't decided how I would present it. I have thought of maybe cutting it. I don't know. The circle came about because I was reading again a little bit on time, and I was reading on how I believe, I don't know if I'm explaining this right, but I believe rigid objects change their appearance if you get closer to the speed of light, like physically change. And I thought that was just ridiculous. How space is also just relative. And so I kept thinking of that and how I could express that.
Wow, that's some heavy stuff. Are you reading like some Stephen Hawking's Brief History of Time?
I read that. One of my favorite ones was Carlo Rovelli. It's just called On Time. He's an Italian astrophysicist who's very, very, he's very good at writing. A lot of scientists aren't. And he's just very poetic. And so it's a little bit easier, but I kind of always go back and read them because I keep forgetting how it goes. It's
Yeah,
confusing.
now's a good time for everybody to kind of dive into that stuff. I mean, you referenced a lot of writing. It's a good time
Yeah,
for
I will
people to.
actually. One of the ones I was trying to reread again was I never finished it, but it's this one actually, Art and Physics.
Oh, cool.
Really interesting. I never thought I'd be interested in science, like ever.
Well,
But
you know that a lot, especially a lot of these Southern California artists were so interested in phenomenological kind of stuff and light and space studies and things like that. You know, it's a thing. You know,
right.
these
Actually,
artists
someone
like.
recently asked me about. I think it was a student. I forget now. Someone asked me if I had any. I was looking at the cubists, and no, I wasn't at all. But they obviously were looking at Einstein because he was publishing this.
Right.
So I thought that was really interesting that someone found that relationship. So it makes sense.
Yeah. In just the last few minutes, because I don't want us to get booted, it's only a few more minutes, but is there anything else you want to mention? Is there any info about the Angelman Syndrome website or anything that
Oh,
people
thank
can
you. No, well, Angelman Syndrome Foundation is a great place to go to see. We're trying to get more people to know about it, not just so
go?
that we can get more funding for research because we almost don't get any from the government. It's all parent based,
Mm-hmm.
and they think they can find a cure in this lifetime. So it would
Mm-hmm.
be amazing. And also, it's good to raise awareness because many children are not diagnosed properly, and they're diagnosed with autism or other issues, and when they finally find out what it is, it's much easier to help them and give them the correct kinds of therapies.
Right.
So yeah, people want to know more about it or go and donate to the cause.
Yeah.
Angelman Syndrome
Um,
Foundation.
what else are we missing?
I don't know, I think we covered a lot of it.
Cool. Um,
Maybe a date for a new bread and salt show.
that would be cool. And you know, we keep talking about what's going to happen with the calendar, and we are already
Yeah.
talking about 2021, especially with all of our shows getting pushed. So
Yeah.
we'll definitely have you back in the building.
Yeah, I'd love to get, yeah, that those
Yeah,
walls are special. I like that they have history. That's another thing that I didn't mention that you did, but that they just have so much history and drawing on them, and then painting over that, it kind of leaves the mural underneath, and I really like that.
yeah. I mean, it gets painted over or whatever, but it's still there. I mean, it's pretty. Yeah, the building's so neat. Just thinking about all the working class families that spent their entire lives and
Yeah.
generations of people working here. You look at the stairs; they're worn down and all that stuff. It's really neat. So just in a final moment, I'm just going to say Sophie Ramos is up next on Tuesday. Francisco M.A., Jason Sherry, Belize, Irisay, Tom Driscoll, and more. We're going to be asking people all the time. And we're also putting the interviews on YouTube. And yeah, it might take a day or so to get yours on there. But yeah, and then also
Great.
we have your work available on the artist site where 100% of the proceeds go to the artist. So if anybody
Thank
feels
you.
like supporting, you can go there.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks, Tom.
thanks.
Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, I'm good. I hope you guys are too. Oh, one thing I forgot. Your husband was making a film during the time of all that stuff. Where is that at, or what has been happening? I'm sure
Yeah,
there's
well,
lots of.
he's online. Go ask him because yeah,
Okay.
that's a great question. Yeah, we were gonna edit it together, and yeah, just life has happened. But this would be a great time. We've talked about it that maybe we should just do it now, and do that documentary, a tiny documentary of my process in bread and salt. And yeah, I mean, hopefully that might bring out some other kinds of small documentaries that I wanted to do on some local artists. But yeah.
Yeah. Somebody did just ask the exact name of the syndrome. They wanted to look at the foundation.
Oh, Angelman. Angel
Angel.
Man.
Yeah.
That was the name of the guy who discovered it. So Angelman Syndrome.
Okay. Cool. Well, thank you for talking with us, and we'll see you later. I'm gonna end
Thank
this
you.
now so we don't get booted. So
Yes. Thank you
yeah.
everyone for
All right.
joining.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Bye.